My expectations for Marianne are very low, and she managed to underperform them in this interview, which is quite remarkable. Where this was Bree at her best. We'll talk about it, but when me and Keaton were talking about this offline, because he had his own encounter with Marianne, I talked about how anyone who's going to interview her and push back, you can sense she's such a deranged narcissist that you have to butter her up if you want to ask a hard question.
Yeah.
Which at certain points in the interview, Bree does. She was very masterful here and full credit. We will certainly discuss at some point why all of these podcasters propped her up to begin with. But at the moment, credit where credit is due. Bree did a great job. So let's take a look at the first segment in which Marianne decries how distorted her image has been by people like Norman Finkelstein.
How do you feel like you were lied about or misrepresented?
Well, let's say your friend Norm Finkelstein. I would be willing to bet $100. He's never read my books.
Marianne Williamson is an airhead. I really wish Marianne Williamson, I'm sorry, I'm getting sick of this. I wish she would just shut up.
But yeah, there's been this image of me as intellectual lightweight from somebody, like I said, who hasn't read my books. There's a term, and hasn't come up to hear me speak. There's a term, what is it? Contempt prior to investigation. So I take 100%.
Okay. Marianne, you feel that you would benefit from Norman Finkelstein reading your books and attending your lectures, which are based on a course in miracles written by a woman who claims that the text was dictated to her by the voice of Jesus. You feel that is what would disabuse Norman Finkelstein of the notion that you're a lightweight and an airhead who has no business opining on the situation in the Middle East. Is that your contention? Is that what you're claiming here?
If I wanted to know which flavor incense to burn after an early lunch at the Chinese buffet in my bathroom, I would happily defer to the expertise of Marianne Williamson by reading one of her books.
Oh, and welcome to a brand new edition of Straight Outta Politics. I'm your host for today. I'm CJ. Starting out with a very funny clip from our duopoly show brothers over at Due Dissidence, Keaton and Russell, always coming with the great impersonations. And I don't know if it's because they're Jewish, but they seem to be spot on with the Bernie Sanders one and this one, Norm Finkelstein is how I've been saying Finkelstein, the Finkelstein, how Russell said it, but very funny over at Due Dissidence. So wanted to start there because that kind of encapsulates sort of the ridiculousness and the backlash that has come from this. I guess you can call it an interview. This felt like a soft interrogation because, as Russell pointed out in the video, you have to massage her ego in order to actually extract usable information out of her. Cornel West is very similar in this way, where both of them want to give these broad sort of phrases and then just kind of expound on a broad sort of context, and we're trying to extrapolate a specific something about something in particular, and they're not getting it. But anyway, we'll get into more of that. I'm gonna switch up the video that we see on the screen. We're gonna get right into it because it's gonna be a shorter stream today. Got some stuff, appointments that must be kept. So now that is, my normal streams are 2.5 hours, so it'll be shorter than that. So, but an hour and a half may not be short to some people, but shorter than my normal. So this is the regular interview. We'll get through as much as we can. It's 27 minutes on the YouTube version of this. But we're not going to cover all of that. And to be honest with you, I had to watch this in spaces. I haven't watched this all the way through. It's unbearable for me to listen to her. So I'm like, well, let me just spot check it for questions and points. And I found like 5, and then I said I'll listen to the one time all the way through. So we're going to do this together. So in between the 5 points that I picked out in the video, there's going to be content that is going to be surprising to me, and it might be interesting for everybody to see that live reaction. So let's go with that. But I think we are at a full circle now. That is RBN. Specifically Nick and CJ show on RBN. Because we called this a long time ago with Marianne Williamson. Before she announced she was running, we called her out. I distinctly remember doing 2 streams months, like whenever she announced. I'm just gonna pick a month out of, unless somebody in the chat know what month she announced. But let's say if she announced in August, we did this in January. So it was a huge gap, like a 5 to 6, 7 month gap in between when we first made content about Marianne Williamson and her actually coming. And it was supposedly a hypothetical conversation that was had. And it was like, oh, this is another bad idea from the professional managerial class, not knowing at the time that she was going to run. And now we'll full circle. And there's a larger point or another point that our Due Dissidence brothers make, and it's a different part of their analysis of this, is that why is she re-entering the race unless this is a book tour? Because President Biden has already crossed the threshold for delegates. So what is the purpose of her re-entering the race unless it's to keep her namesake out there in public for so it can be capitalized on? Because on the most pressing, the top line topic that is on our plate right now, which is Palestine, she's on the wrong side of that. So it wouldn't be like she's coming to the rescue. I'm coming back to be the only candidate that's pro-Palestinian. She's not doing that. I see what's happening in Gaza, so I'm coming back to be a voice, saying it, at least a voice for that side, because no one else is there. But we have Cornel West that's mildly doing it. And then we have Jill Stein that's doing it. We have Claudia Dela Cruz that's doing it. So, and like I said, she's on the wrong side. So what is the purpose for her to be here? And what's so just shockingly transparent is that she starts with how she's offended that she is some sort of at a lower intellect, when later on in the stream she talks about how she never said the word Zionist when she defined herself as Zionist by the Zionist is not defined by if you declare you are or not. It's what you believe in. And she has no clue what sort of bullet points to check off to be like, okay, that's enough to make you a Zionist. She doesn't understand that's all it takes, which shows her intellect about the word, the concept. So, and this is just a guess of mine, it's clearly a Jewish person whom, and this is just by other Jewish people's accounts, have said, those who are pro-Palestinian, like those in the Jewish Voices for Peace, I think it's called, as a kid, they're taught, they're indoctrinated to believe these fantasy stories about the situation where when they become an adult, they learn is just not true. She is obviously a person who still believes in those stories. Even if it's a little bit, she's still tethered to the concept that the state of Israel can be a somehow a colonial project for the good. It can only be born out of a thinking out of the United States. Only an American, or I shouldn't say United States, out of another colonial power. So in Britain, they probably think of just ridiculous way of thinking. So that is a long preface because this has been a long road to this moment, because it feels like this is going to be one of the last times we cover, or I cover, Marianne Williamson. I thought it was over, but her revisiting RBN in particular, or at least Bree showing RBN clips as a reference to display, to illustrate a point in her content. It felt like, this had to be addressed. I was watching Heartlands Media, kid over at Heartlands Media. He was the first one I saw address this. And he was like, I can't wait till RBN covers this. It's like, this is lovely. But anyway, Nick didn't cover it, and that's what I waited for, really. I had to wait to see if Nick was going to cover it last night. Then we had the news of Julian Assange, which is a much more important story. This is a satellite sort of story. So yeah. All right. So I've said enough. Let's get into the interview. I'm going to try to play it as long as I can without interrupting. Like I said, she's one of the people that trigger me when she speaks. Obama's another one. That's a lot of people. Maybe I shouldn't start listing them because Nancy Pelosi's another one. Who else triggers me? Anyway, let's not get into that long list of people. Hit that like button on YouTube. Let's have a target of 800. So get us to 800 on YouTube. Wherever you're watching, especially on Twitter, because we have a large audience on Twitter. Our Twitter audience is starting to build, or X, if you call it X. You guys are watching, but you're not hitting the like button. Like, it's higher than normal. But if you're watching, and as you were talking about, like right now, there's over 300 people watching on Twitter through Nick's stream. Hit that like button. 300. That should be like 300 easily. It's 300 of you watching right now. There's 300 through the 150 on the main account. Hit that like button on that stream. If you're on a Twitch stream, hit that like button. On the Long Beach RBN stream, on YouTube, hit that like button. There's 10 of you over there. Hit that like button. On Facebook, hit that like button. All of you. So we got a lot of people watching on a lot of different platforms. Hit that like button. Let's get started in the madness. This is really just going to be a fun segment. Hopefully it doesn't take up the bulk of the stream. It's just really going to matter on the point how I react to it. So I still want to get to the Diddy information and some other Kennedy stuff.
I feel like I'd be remiss not to pick up on one of the points you made there, which was feeling misrepresented by some progressive commentators. Would you mind kind of putting a finer point on what you think the nature of that mischaracterization was? How do you feel like you were lied about or misrepresented?
Well, let's say your friend Norm Finkelstein. I would be willing to bet $100. He's never read my books. He knows nothing about my career.
Norm Finkelstein's critique of Marianne Williamson has to do with what the things she has said or posted about foreign policy in particular. What does your book and reading of it has to do with that critique. What information in the book can be gained that changes his mind about what you've said in other spaces about foreign policy? This is what you call white woman playing victim. She thought Bree was going to let her come and just, play the damsel in distress card, which is the only card she knows how to play besides boss tyrant. So she tries many times, but Bree breaks up her act and then tries to ask another question. That's why it doesn't really lift off and catch flight. So let's listen to her answer to this.
He knows nothing about my life.
What is the claim? The claim that he's made that you feel?
Well, and he knows nothing about the.
She felt a white woman monologue coming on. She felt a Karen monologue, and Bree went to Harvard. She recognizes when she sees one. She was like, oh no, I know where this is going. Excuse me. Excuse me. Can you answer the question, please? Can you elaborate? She was about to go into one right there, and Bree cut her off. Thank you, Bree. You saved us all from that one. She's not going to save us from all of them, but she saved us here. Let's see if she keeps her on track.
He knows nothing about my career. He knows nothing about my life.
What is the claim? The claim that he's made that you feel?
Well, and he knows nothing about I doubt that he's looked at the issues on Marianne 2024 and how hard I and others work to develop them.
So you hear what she said? In order to prove that she's at some sort of reasonable intellect, acceptable intellect, he has to go and read her books. He has to go to a website and read her campaign words. He can't just listen to you. That's what you're saying, Marianne Williamson? He can't just listen to you talk about the issue? You want him to go read a book that you supposedly wrote? You want him to go read some words on a website that we know you didn't write? Jason Call wrote your whole platform. He said it already on Twitter. And he took that tweet. I believe he took the tweet down. Maybe somebody got screenshots of it. He wrote all of that shit. So she wants him to go there where there's a bunch of words that somebody else wrote to prove that she's knowledgeable of the situation. Is that serious? Is that serious? We dodged a bullet here. We dodged a bullet. We would have dodged a bullet if this was Bernie Sanders running for a third time, but we really dodged a bullet here. You would think a person who has been called out about your intellect, you would go read up on it. She doesn't do that. This is not the first time that somebody has made references to her being knowledgeable about topics. She never goes back and brushes up on those topics and then comes back. She never does that. Let's continue.
And yet the sneers, the use of his own platform on your shows and others.
Marianne Williamson is an airhead. And I don't see why anyone should take.
Okay. This is my favorite clip of all time right now with Norman. So every time I watch this is unbearably funny to me. So I might replay this a couple of times before we get through. This is, oh my God, this is classic. This is just hilarious.
Take into account anything she has to say about anything. Okay, she's good at self-help. Fine. If I need self-help, I would go to Marianne Williamson. Well, I haven't a clue why she's commenting on these subjects. She has no idea what she's talking about. I really wish Marianne Williamson, I'm sorry, I'm getting sick of this. I wish she would just shut up. Because she hasn't a clue what she's talking about. So she should just, I'm sorry for raising my voice. I'm not supposed to do that, but I'm tired.
This is why I love Norm. Aside from the policy, because there's things he says that he has says that I differ on him about. But when you get to the age he's at, and he makes reference to it all the time, it is like, really, what the fuck are you really gonna do to me? I'm gonna talk the fuck the way I want to talk. Sometimes I feel like I've reached that level already. I call it the Jedi level. I feel like I've reached that level already a little bit early, but maybe I'm just I know I'm an apprenticeship at least, if not completely there. But that's what people love, because he speaks exactly, not just saying the words, in the tone, with the anger, with the discontentment, with the level. All of it. People want to speak like this to their bosses, for example, to their dumb coworkers. People want to speak like this, but they know in polite society, in order to get along through work or school, you can't do it. But when you reach this age, this Jedi level, it's like, fuck that shit. And that's what I love about Norm. So let's continue with the video. I'm sorry for the short little thing, but let's play it a couple of minutes here.
I just wish she would shut up, because she hasn't a clue what she's talking about. And she speaks with such authority, like she's a graduate of a girls' finishing school. She speaks with such authority. Authority about what? Ms. Williamson, have you read a single book on the subject? Have you read a single human rights report on the subject? Have you read a single economics report on the subject? Then what are you talking about?
These voices don't matter. That's why you call somebody an influencer. Look, I'm not everybody's. Somebody might disagree with me. And so, of course, criticism, especially if you're running for president. But when someone's criticizing you, demeaning you, shaming you for being someone that you're not.
Now, this is the part where I haven't been able to decipher. Someone that you're not. I think she's saying she's not a Zionist, which speaks to the point, C point 1 from Norm Finkelstein. That's what it feels like, but let's listen.
I think that's, yeah. I think it might be constructive for you to have an opportunity to push back directly against any particular criticism that you think doesn't represent you, because I think it might be useful to disentangle what is an actual disagreement, right? A substantive political disagreement, from what you feel like have been misrepresentations, unfair charges about what you actually believe.
And who I am. Am and what I've done with my life. That's the thing. I think sometimes I'm a boomer, and I came, like one of the things I heard him say to you on one of your shows, she doesn't come from a movement. Excuse me, not from his movement. There are other ways to enter a room and to have beliefs. And anyway, so yeah, there's been this image of me as intellectual lightweight from somebody, like I said, who hasn't read my books. There's a term, and hasn't come to hear me speak. There's a term, what is it? Contempt prior to investigation. So, I think
This is what I mean by broad terms. My headset went out, so I'm gonna have to kind of go back and forth with the mute button here. Why wouldn't he just engage with you? She wants him to go back and refer to his books to prove that she's intellectually smart on what the subjects of the books are? Or does she think him reading about some self-help he's gonna go, oh, now I get the points you're making about foreign policy? It's really just bizarre what she's saying. Let's try to continue though.
Think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think when people actually come and hear me, they might leave thinking, I don't agree with those politics. But I don't think anybody comes and hears me and thinks that I'm that person. You know, what it is this doppelganger that gets created about you. And like even anti-vax, I never made an anti-vax statement. I made a statement about mandates before COVID, by the way, on the issue of civil liberties and mandates. So then it becomes, you know, so anyway.
Well, that frankly is, I think, the kind of position that is, you know, a significant factor in RFK Jr.'s popularity.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to someone, you know, a friend in the Bernie campaign about this last night, about what Trump taught us about the value of sticking by unpopular opinions. I know that's a little bit of a weird way to put it, but that when you believe something and there's public backlash for it, Trump refuses to apologize and he doubles down, and it creates this kind of invincibility about him.
I think I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, my campaign, I think I've made it clear. I stick with an opinion whether you agree with me or not. It just happens to be on vaccines that I'm not anti-vax. And I had so many experiences on this campaign of saying to someone, well, actually, that's not what I believe. And somebody says, yes, it is what you believe.
So to prove her point, she brings up a claim that, and I've heard this about her, that nobody in the podcast community makes about her. RFK Jr. I'm sorry. Who else has been critiqued? Do Dissidents hasn't made that claim? We haven't made that claim. I'm trying to think who else hasn't made that claim. I don't think. Yeah, Jimmy Dore hasn't made that claim. RFK Jr., who the anti-vax guy, who they call it anti-vax, hasn't made that claim. So, I don't think Norm has made the claim either. So the point that she's making, it is eluding me.
And I'm like, wait a minute. I think I would know what I believe. And then they say, I read on the internet that you believe. So where do you go with that? So no, I agree with you on that. And I think it is part of the popularity of Trump. And I like to think that I'm that person. Listen, I'm obviously not running to try to, I mean, I'm running to put forth the opinions that I have. I mean, I'm open if somebody points out that I'm wrong about something and I change my mind. But
are you?
That's the thing. To be dismissed for who you actually are.
Are you open? And are you being dismissed for who you actually are? Or because she's making the claim that she's being dismissed for who she's not. Now, as far as the anti-vaxxer part, the crowd that's calling her anti-vaxxers are those cowbell leftists that support the Democratic Party. The ones who believe hook, line, and sinker, everything that comes from the Democratic Party, everything the Democratic Party establishment says, everything from the FDA, all that type of cowbell left. The ones that got every single booster shot, every single booster of the booster shot, and every single booster of the booster shot. Those are the people that call her anti-vaxxer, because those people believe any sort of denial, any sort of not getting any booster shots, you got one shot and didn't get the rest, you're anti-vaxxer. So if you're not 100%, if you're 97%, you're an anti-vaxxer. That crowd called her that. And she's trying to pretend that's why people didn't, or that's the running narrative of why people didn't, I guess, jump on her campaign, which is just absurd. The bigger issue is Palestine. Wouldn't you think? And the issue before that with your campaign, the bigger issue was Ukraine. None of these things that you're bringing up here.
I understand. But in so many ways, I was dismissed for being who I'm actually not. But by the way, it's not a poor me. I'm a big girl and all. And I think the systemic blocks to my candidacy were much bigger than that. They had to do with the DNC saying there would not be a primary, the way CNN blacklisted MSNBC. It was all those things. It was and listen, my own failures. It was people lying about me, though. People saying something about my personality with whom I'd never had a cross word. Somebody saying just outrageous, but the fact that people believe things. And I want to say something because this is important to me. In every situation where I might complain, I'm very aware. If I had been better at this, if I had been better at that, if I had been wiser about this or that, then I could have overridden it. So I take 100% responsibility for my own experience. We even had somebody who'd infiltrated the.
Now, I was trying to stop it before she said that part because I was going to set that up. So if you didn't hear it clearly, hopefully you didn't. So this is the take responsibility, but I don't take responsibility speech right here. I take responsibility for everything. But by the way, we had an infiltrator. And I got called an anti-vaxxer. This sounds like Jane dropping out and mentioning everything else except for the fact that people don't support you. That's all. That's all.
The campaign. I was afraid I couldn't get rid of that person because I thought the press would go nuts. I should have just done it.
When you say infiltrated, from where?
Why would the press go nuts? Marianne Williamson? Because some disgruntled campaign associate, low-level campaign associate, or if it's a high-level campaign associate, why would the press go nuts over that? Is it because you have a long track record that goes back decades? Is that it? It would speak to your decades-long reputation about treatment of subordinates. So she's saying there was an infiltrator on the campaign. So you have a spy, and because you don't want it to look bad, if you take a spy out of your campaign, you leave the spy there. That's what she wants you guys to believe. This is remember the way they talked about Marianne Williamson? Bree was one of them, Crystal Ball, Kyle. Those words that described her they didn't age well.
Can you?
Well, I'm not going to go into it, but I will tell you this. There are political hitmen. There are political operatives who infiltrate campaigns like mine. When
I'm not going to go into it, but I'm just going to give you some other unfounded claims that I have. I'm not going to tell you any details about if you ask me questions. That sounds like a true story she's telling you.
you run for president, the FBI calls you. And the FBI says, please come in. We'd like to give you a briefing. And it's the exact same briefing that we're going to give every other candidate who's running. And, it's not too long. It's maybe 20 minutes. And they tell you all these things to be on the lookout for. And then they say that they are very common. And they say the main actors are Russia, China, and Iran. And I actually looked at the gentleman and I said, I'm aware of all those things. And they didn't come from outside. So it's
Russia, China, and Iran. I'm not sure what she believes she's proving with this tangent. but a State Department person, FBI, I think she said, comes to you to tell you some U.S. Imperialism talking points. I'm not sure. Let's see what else she's trying to prove here. I'm not sure what she's trying to prove here.
It's the fact that we have campaign suppression. Now we're talking about the system itself. You know, if you have an elite, a political media industrial complex, as I call it, that feels it has the right to curate the candidates, to say who and who you should not.
Wait, did she finish on the FBI stuff? What? Where did I miss? She just pivoted mid-sentence and went to a different track. Let me go back 17 seconds here.
Suppression. Now we're talking about the system itself.
Actually, must go back a little bit more because it was before that.
So it's the fact that we have campaign suppression. Now we're talking about the system itself.
Oh yeah,
You know, if you have an elite, a political media industrial complex, as I call it, that feels it has the right to curate the candidates, to say who and who you should not feel is qualified, that's candidate suppression. And to me, candidate suppression is a form of voter suppression. So I
want to ask you a little bit about that and some new reporting about the Democratic Party's renewed legal efforts to undermine any third parties who they perceive to be potential spoilers in the general election. But before we get there, I do want to come back to this idea of unfair left criticism. When you first raised the prospect, I thought you might be alluding to the interview that you had done with Revolutionary Blackout Network as opposed to Norm Finkelstein, and kind of the backlash out of that, especially because of how central Israel and Gaza has become after October 7th. And you mentioned that you stand firmly by your opinion,
which is that didn't age well, because just like a lot of social democrats, a lot of progressive Democrats, a lot of people who support them, they've been giving the quasi pseudo fake Palestinian support credit. Let me let her make the point.
But also when new factors come into play or persuasive arguments are made, you're open to change. And I want
hold on, let me rewind it a second here.
Mention that you stand firmly by your opinions, but also when new factors come into play or persuasive arguments are made, you're open to change. And I wonder whether or not you see, one, the RBN interview as misrepresenting your opinions, and or whether or not I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know that informed me what I said. First of all, Norm Finkelstein was starting after me long before October 7th. But what was it that I said on RBN?
So the point before I got all choked up with some stuff I was eating. Anyway, the interview that she did on our station was before the October 7th. So what I was saying is the social democrat, the progressive Democrat position, all up until this point, up until before October 6th and before, has been give people, don't be a single issue sort of voter, don't be a single issue sort of person by going so hard on Palestine, or people who wasn't perfect on Palestine. And that's what they said about Marianne Williamson. She wasn't perfect on Palestine, but she was better than most others. And it didn't age well, considering now the genocide that we look on. So let's let it play. And then but that's that's the analysis I wanted to add it earlier.
that you're referring to? Because I know even in private, you referred to that as a big faux pas on my part. What did I say on that show? And then I could respond to it. This is one area, to be honest, where I think Obama did make an effort. And he's unpopular with a lot of people there for that reason, to be honest. But I think he did make an effort to bring the Palestinian issue onto the table in a way that it had not been before within the major political dialogue in America. And I would certainly seek to do that. I also think, if I might say, because I'm a Jewish woman, I think that I would have actually some moral authority in doing that. My support for Israel should not be at the expense of my Jewish values. And as an American, my support for Israel should not be at the expense of my democratic values. Right now, it's becoming that way, and that's a problem.
Marianne, I appreciate for the answer, but I talked to the Palestinian Community Network, got a lot of Palestinian allies. They will not find that to be an acceptable answer.
So now they don't play the part right before this, and maybe I can, if there are some of you are watching this and it's like there's a little bit of a gap in understanding what she's doing is explaining a bad answer. She brought up, they talking about Israel and Palestine pre-October 7th. Keep that in mind. So it's pre-genocide. They're talking about that, and her answer is the answer of a Zionist, two-state solution, all of this stuff, right? That's her answer. And then Nick gives her some pushback, and then this is her pushback to that. Like, her explanation is, well, my Zionism shouldn't be critiqued, basically. You heard her answer. And then this is, you see Nick's pushback to that. So let's rewind it maybe 30 seconds here. Let's go back 30 seconds. 20 seconds. Yeah, that's enough.
And doing that. My support for Israel should not be at the expense of my Jewish values. And as an American, my support for Israel should not be at the expense of my democratic values. Right now, it's becoming that way, and that's a problem.
Marianne, I appreciate for the answer, but I talked to the Palestinian Community Network, got a lot of Palestinian allies. They will not find that to be an acceptable answer. It's one.
Well, I know.
I don't know. Have one state where everyone have equal rights under the law. The Israel Zionists are not to be trusted to implement a two-state solution, as that's been shown many and many times. So I hope you have conversations with some of the Palestinians. That's a hard.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait. No. Let me speak.
I just want you can respond to that as well, but because I know you have limited time, because also.
Okay. I would like a chance to respond.
Yeah, go ahead, and I want to ask you about Ukraine. Go ahead.
Yeah. What I.
Did you hear Nick say, I want to ask you about Ukraine as well? That was, at that time, that was the topic she wanted to stay far, far away from, which is partly a reason why I believe she forced this interview to go off the rails by the nonsense she was saying. And pretend, oh, I'm going to get out of here and I'm offended and all this stuff, is because he's just informed her, we're going to go to Ukraine after this. So let's listen.
I would say to you is, when you say you have a lot of Palestinian friends, how many Palestinian friends you have? I have a lot of Palestinian friends. You say you've talked to Palestinians. I have talked to Palestinians. So I don't think we have a con.
No, Nick, you're being nice. I'm not going to be nice to that, because the Palestinians, which circle of Palestinians would somebody in Marianne Williamson be around? Would it be the circle of Palestinians that maybe are part of the professional managerial class, maybe part of academia? Those aren't the Palestinians we're talking about. We're not talking about Americanized Palestinians. We're not talking about whitewashed Palestinians. So this is like when I had black friends. Who? Gwyneth Paltrow? Do you have black friends? If your friends are Beyonce and Jay-Z, sorry, you don't have black friends. You have friends in your class, ma'am. That's it. The point being, the people in her class take bourgeoisie marginalized groups, people represented. So, for example, Black bourgeoisie, they'll take what they have to say. Oprah, before she would take what working class Black people have to say, she'll say, "Oh, well, I talked to Oprah. She, you know, what she has to say, I'm going to go with that." So nobody's talking about that. The Palestinian Community Network is not that. Those are the people Nick is referring to, he talked to. But this is where she's offended. Because she talked to some bourgeoisie Palestinian who gave her a version of a solution that is palatable to Western chauvinists, she wants to point to them as her friends. The fuck out of here, Heartlands Media in the building. And like I was saying, Kit, I was not going to cover this. I thought Nick was going to cover this last night, but since he didn't, I did, because I watched your stream. You were like, I can't wait till RBN covers this shit. And I saw you beautifully take this bullshit down. So it's my turn, sir. Welcome, Kit, in the building from Heartlands. Let's continue. And then we're gonna move on to something else. Maybe another 10 minutes of this, maybe.
Contest here of you're telling me you know Palestinians and I don't, so that doesn't work for me.
That's a fair point, but I'm telling you.
So the point is, right now,
on the
Palestine. See, if you're not gonna let me talk, honey, there's no point in this. If you're not gonna let me talk,
let me rewind it back before I say this. Let me make sure I'm hearing what I'm hearing.
And friends you have, I have a lot of Palestinian friends. You say you've talked to Palestinians. I have talked to Palestinians. So I don't think we have a contest here of you're telling me you know Palestinians and I don't. So that doesn't work for me.
That's a fair point, but I'm telling you.
So the point is, right now,
on the
Palestine. See, if you're not gonna let me talk, honey, there's no point in this. If you're not gonna let me talk.
If you don't think the last 45 seconds was strategy to get out of this interview so she doesn't have to address Ukraine, you're fooling yourself. Because it's sort of bizarre for her to highly get offended by what she's saying she's been offended by. And because they're going back and forth, she now, if you're not gonna, now she wants to play the victim. This is why it was good that I wasn't there, because this is the type of shit I would have been like, just like Jimmy Dore. Please stop pretending like somebody stopped telling you from talking. Stop that. She asked to come on here. She asked to come on RBN because we had a scathing critique of her and anybody who would suggest that the left should support her. And it was a critique that had legs, meaning people were going, yeah, RBN said this. Who is this RBN? Let me come on here and say something. And she went on here and face planted and played the damsel in distress.
If you're not going to let me talk to the things you say, then there really is no.
So weak.
We are having the conversation.
Weak.
No, we're not. No, we're not. You're doing a lot of mansplaining here, and you're telling me what is. You're not. You're asking, right, and you're not giving me.
You motherfuckers don't want to call this bullshit. Let me call it bullshit.
Well, I already. Oh, and now more men are going to be laughing at me. So
look at her. Look at her.
Off the top of my head, my recollection was that they.
Let me just say this. Now, at the time, Nick, we went off at that time. Now that I look back on it, I wish I took that shit to another level. To see the charlatan in this person and how she's doubling it down, I'm going to make up a word on her charlatanness, makes me feel like I should have went harder at that fucking interview right there when I came in there. Let me let it play before I start to use a lot of profanity.
Broadly, after the fact, charged you with being a Zionist. It does, people have whatever they think about what that definition is, but definitionally a commitment to the there being a Jewish state that is Israel. And it does not seem as though that's incorrect, would you say?
Well, the bit about
You see how she has to baby critique. And this is her saying, you are a Zionist by definition. But to Russell's point in the beginning with the intro video, this is what he was referring to. Where you can't come at a person like this because this person thinks she's above everybody. So she has to say it like she's talking to a 2-year-old. Isn't this how you would explain it to a 2-year-old? Well, honey, the definition of stealing is taking something that's not yours and you kind of have the thing in your hand. Isn't that what she's saying? Let's continue.
Zionist, I never said the word Zionism has been so changed over the years.
This is where she's saying she never said the word Zionism, as if that Zionist, as if she has to say that. And then she goes into try to explain how she grew up with the understanding and how it has changed. Let's listen to how it has changed over the years. Let's listen.
The original concept, like as I was brought up, was the idea that Israel had the right to exist, not that no one else did. So I stay away from that word now because of what it means to so many people. So I did not say on that show or anywhere else those words. My commitment to the belief that Israel has a right to exist is no more and no less than my commitment to the fact that the Palestinians also have the right to a Palestinian state.
She believes this is so. Norman Finkelstein is absolutely right. You have no idea what you're talking about. This is why people believe you have low intellect. The fact that you're talking about a Jewish state, irregardless of you saying there should be a Palestinian state, makes you a Zionist. The Jewish state part is the Zionist part. Because people like us believe that this should be Palestine. If Jewish people want to live there, that's fine. It'll be like a home invasion robber comes in and then says, let's form a 2-household solution here. Does forming a 2-household solution by a home invasion robber, does that make it not a home invasion robbery? Let's continue.
I believe the United States, and I personally feel an equally robust commitment to the peace, the security, and the sovereignty of both peoples. And I, as a candidate, stand for that. And personally, in my heart, I believe that both peoples have the right to a state.
I think what tips it over into, what would be correctly described as Zionism is believing that it's not just the right to a state, but the right to a Jewish state, which of course can only be maintained by precluding immigration by Palestinians into Israel that would change the demographic character of Israel. And that's why there's so much conflict and tension over whether or not the 700,000 odd Palestinians that were expelled during the Nakba have a right of return, whether or not, the quote unquote need for there to be a wall around Gaza in the first place to limit the egress and ingress of Palestinians into greater Israel, the kind of apartheid, what's been described as an apartheid system of different checkpoints and roads that Palestinians versus Israelis can go down to and go along rather. And the fact that there has been a blocking of a Palestinian state by Western American veto for decades and decades and decades now, despite statehood being one of the fundamental rights that the UN believes every person on the earth has a right to have. I mean, so correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but it does.
You are. But the 20% of the Israeli population is Arab Palestinian. Listen, we had segregation in the United States. It was wrong and it needed to be dismantled. To whatever extent there are unjust, undemocratic laws towards anyone in Israel, and they are not across the board as is pictured by some, that needs to be changed. But to me, that does not necessitate the destruction of the state of Israel.
But do you
And
see what
the
I'm
law
saying, Marianne?
does
There's
not
a difference between there could be a state of Israel that was inclusive. This is like the one state solution, right? There could be a state of Israel that's inclusive of the 5 million people or so that live in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, where they have equal rights as all Jewish and Arab Israelis.
The occupation of the West Bank is illegal. The occupation of the West Bank did not exist before 1967, 1968, when all those changes occurred because of the war. So you could still have an Israeli state and dismantle the occupation and also those settlements which are illegal. That does not.
So would that mean, would you endorse the full right of return of all the Palestinians?
That would probably mean that needs to be completely, has to be a negotiation for a two-state solution. There has to be a negotiation for a two-state solution.
So when we're talking about one state, that's fine as long as there's no right of return. Once the right of return comes into play, she quickly switches to two-state solution. Let's continue. Sake of time.
I ask you, when you talk about a one-state solution, who is going to govern that one state? What is going to be the governance of this one state? And if these people are killing each other the way they are now, not even the majority of them living in the same place, to me, the idea of a one-state solution is a setup for a bloody civil war such as we have never seen. So
there's a couple of things built in there, Marianne. I mean, part of the problem is, I think, the characterization of killing each other as though there haven't been enormous asymmetries long before October 7th of who is dying.
You know what? I'm not going there. I have said for years, for years,
I'm not going
there.
there.
Decrying, and this is well on record. For years, I've decried the.
So Bree was trying to bring up the point. You're saying that there can't be a one-state solution because people they have been killing each other, and Bree is saying no, they haven't been killing each other. Israel has been killing them. So Israel is the one that would need to stop the killing, is the point that she's trying to get to. And when she knows that that's where she's going, I'm not going down there. That's because you're a Zionist. You're offended because you're a Zionist. She doesn't even get that.
Settlements. For years, I have decried the occupation. For years, I have decried the siege. For years, and I'm on record. And I also have called for a ceasefire, not only from the day it began, but even before. But this is my honest belief. I'm at this point, and because I'm where I am in the campaign, there are people who, no matter what I say, and on this as well as everything else, like you said before, I'm not changing my basic beliefs. And I believe that, as I said before, that the United States should have an equally robust commitment to the safety and the security and the sovereignty of both peoples. And I've written, if somebody goes to Marianne2024.com,
right, of course,
I have a whole section there on Israel and Palestine.
There, where Jason Call wrote all of that stuff.
Everything
read all of his words.
I have said on video, and one of the things that I've become very aware of is that anything I say, there are those who will take something out of context, even like when you say RBN,
like a whole paragraph
to me before, and I wasn't quite sure. Well, if he called me a Zionist, that wasn't based on anything I said, I assure you.
It's based on everything you said. This woman is a buffoon. This woman is an absolute buffoon. There's no There's no other way to call her. She is an absolute buffoon, and I've had enough. I can't take this person no more here. I have to move on. But she is an absolute buffoon, as displayed here. Let me see, where is my other? So, final words on this is that you just go to the comments. In the comment section is total destruction of this person, because this is nonsense. While I have it here, I'll read a couple here. Does this make it bigger? Make these comments bigger. Where did it go? Okay, down here. Let's read a couple here. So 1,500 comments plus. This one says, I'm not going there. She doesn't need to go there, but as someone who aspires to be an elected taxpayer-funded position, she is duty-bound to absolutely go there. That's a great point. Sitting on the fence while thousands of children are being slaughtered is disgusting. Wow, that's 723 likes. Or thumbs up. I feel like I just listened to one of my mom's drunk friends trying to condescendingly convince me how she's not racist. That's pretty much spot on. That's pretty spot on. To be clear, Norm was reacting to a clip where Marianne said Israel is not illegally occupying Gaza. Which, she is a buffoon. We don't keep saying it. Wow, she genuinely has no idea what she's talking about. So this is the same assessment I have. Like, it's like she really doesn't know. So she just proved Norm was right about her. That's too long. I'm not reading that whole paragraph there. So because I like them short. First thought Finkelstein's reaction was too harsh. Now, after hearing her talk about Israel-Palestine, I don't think he was harsh enough. She is absolutely disgustingly self-righteous. I think I'll leave it there. But all the comments are just like that. And they're well-deserved. They're well-deserved. And like I said, it feels like a full circle. I'll bring her down now. It feels like a full circle as far as Marianne Williamson and RBN's critique and analysis of her. It feels like we have been vindicated several times over. So, and I just showed these comments here already. I had it prepped to show, but I showed them in the actual item there. So let's go to Diddy. Let's go to Diddy stuff here. Yeah, let's go to Diddy. Where is it? Diddy did it. So let's listen to some of what's happening with Diddy, and then we'll comment on it. We're going to listen to a lot of this with comment. And if you hadn't heard, Diddy's home was raided, and it's raided by an investigation group, part of the Homeland Security, who investigates sex trafficking. So Diddy was not at any of the homes, LA, New York, Miami. I think the ones in Miami and LA were being raided. There was video of some of his kids who are adults. The ones who are adults, he had these minor kids with him. So let's listen to a little bit of what's going on with that from here and comment. This will be a quick segment here.
Yesterday, federal agents executed search warrants at 2 properties in Los Angeles and Miami belonging to rap mogul Sean Diddy Combs. A source familiar with the matter told NBC News that Combs is the subject of a federal investigation following a wave of lawsuits that have been filed against him. Those lawsuits, including from his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, alleged physical and sexual abuse, which Combs has denied. The source also confirmed that 3 women and a man have been interviewed by federal officials in Manhattan in relation to allegations of sex trafficking, sexual assault, and the solicitation and distribution of illegal narcotics and firearms. Late today, Combs' lawyer issued the following statement. Quote, yesterday, there was a gross overuse of military-level force as search warrants were executed at Mr. Combs' residences. There was no excuse for the excessive show of force and hostility exhibited by authorities or the way his children and employees were treated. Mr. Combs was never detained, but spoke to and cooperated with authorities. Despite media speculation, neither Mr. Combs nor any of his family members have been arrested, nor has their ability to travel been restricted in any way. This unprecedented ambush, paired with an advanced coordinated media presence, leads to a premature rush to judgment of Mr. Combs and is nothing more than a witch hunt based on meritless accusations made in civil lawsuits. There's been no finding of criminal or civil liability with any of these allegations. Mr. Combs is innocent and will continue to fight every single day to clear his name, unquote. Joining me now, Ms. Touré, host of Masters of the Game. The new season premieres Friday on the Griot. What is going on? Because we did also see Diddy's sons arrested. They were detained. They weren't arrested. They were just detained. Yeah. But what is going on?
Well, it seems that there are several people who are saying things about Combs to the government, and they are trying to figure out what's going on. I found it interesting that they.
So, there's a lot going on. This has been covered the situation, what's happening to Sean Diddy Combs, has been covered before. It was covered by the Sabby and JB show about the initial allegations with Cassie, his ex-girlfriend, the recording artist. So that has been covered. That sort of triggered more lawsuits, some from men claiming some sort of sexual battery or sort of a sexual offense. I think it's 2 or 3 after Cassie, which triggered some law enforcement to sort of look into it. And it sounds like what Touré is saying, there was some people that also tipped off or said some things. I guess you can call that a tip. And here we are. What's his name? Diddy was traveling with his 2 twin daughters who are both underage. They're 17. So that's who he was traveling with. Now let me let him add a little bit more color to this as far as background. When I say color, a little more color to it, to the story.
He had enough to get a search warrant, right, for multiple places, but not enough yet to arrest him. So we're in the investigation phase, and clearly they don't care if we let him know that we know what's going on.
Yeah.
But it seems part of his whole life, his whole journey has been this sort of scorched earth campaign where you see him continuing to succeed or do big things and leave people in his wake hurt. We go back to CCNY, which a party that he over promoted that people ended up getting killed. You think about the many artists who either left, in complaint or went to the church or, died after, I mean, there was a lot of disheartened artists who left him that he raised up. On and on. And now this large growing number of people who are alleging crazy stuff about him. Yeah. And these are things that people in the industry have been hearing about.
It's giving R. Kelly, Touré. It's disturbing.
I was personally disturbed many years ago. Okay. I know this man well enough to call him and say, hey, I need a favor.
Yeah.
And this might have been 10, 12 years ago that I called him and say, hey, I have a family member who I want you to hire them as an intern. Yeah. And
so there's a couple of things we're getting a window into. We're getting a window into how this is not a merit-based system. You just saw him pick up a phone and say, hey, get my relative a job. I don't know anybody I could do that with. So the black bourgeoisie doing the same shit that the white bourgeoisie does. And then the second thing is there's a lot of these stories, Touré, for example, but none of you guys came out when he was all on the stage saying, take that, take that, take that, making money. When other people come out, now everybody want to tell their stories. Your story would have helped earlier, maybe. But let's listen to what he says, and then we'll close out this segment.
I have never talked about this publicly, and he said yes, and they were flying around, one of the interns, Atlanta, Miami, whatever, on the jet, in the house, whatever. And then the internship stopped abruptly, like 3 or 4 months into it.
Yeah.
And I spoke to my family member, like, well, what happened? And they wouldn't say.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why did it end? He wouldn't say. And years later, they finally came out, and this is a male, and said that Puff had said, come home, stay the night with me, or the internship is over. And they said, absolutely not. He said, absolutely not. And the internship ended. But from there.
So that's how his relative internship ended. So as a bunch of people in the industry, you see how the people, the professional managerial class or just the bourgeoisie class, what they value their own self-interest first. They value keeping their status, their money, their position, instead of coming forward and telling the story of abuse, it sounds like here. He said, oh, well, okay, well, I guess I'll keep my mouth shut. And this happened all over the place. What I'm wondering is what Mace, who was at his hip for so long when Notorious B.I.G., Christopher Wallace died or was killed, I'm just wondering what stories does he have? What stories does Usher have? Usher lived with him pre-18. What stories does Justin Bieber have? Is that how you say his name? Bieber? Pre-18. Brought in by the previous pre-18 guy, Usher. So, I mean, it's a lot of questions, and it sounds like we'll see what happens, but it sounds like this guy was living life thinking that he could just do whatever, and thought money would save him, and it doesn't look like that's what's happening.
I was like, oh, like this is how it goes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So to hear that things went even further with potentially, allegedly, many other people. Yeah. It's not, we feel like we've seen this coming.
Well, there was the situation with obviously Russell Simmons, who does not live in the United States any further. Mm-hmm. You've had these situations obviously with.
Wow, I didn't know that about Russell Simmons. They kind of go off and they come back to him, but we're going to close it here. But, just know this is an evolving story. This is an evolving story, and we'll see what happens after they collect the evidence and, what happens. But right now, that is the latest on the story, and this is just showing you everybody has something to say about it on it when you type in P. Diddy. But anyway, let's get to another story. I'm going to squeeze in this other one here, another 10 minutes here, and then I'm going to get out of here. And we're going to start with RFK's pick, and we're going to start with his announcement video first. Not that one, this one right here. Okay, so we're going to start with his announcement video. Is this it? There's a shorter version of this somewhere. Is there not? Okay. All right, I'll play the longer version, but I won't play all of it. All right, so it's in the beginning. All right, so let's play this announcement of his VP pick, and then we'll talk about how this VP pick by RFK Jr. he was already a threat by the Democratic Party, and they already was setting up a task force, has already set up a task force in the DNC to go after third-party threats, in particular RFK Jr. So maybe this is a response to that. This selection, I would assume they've been vetting her for a while, so they may have made this decision a while ago. But maybe it is connected where he knows they're coming after him, so he's getting somebody with deep pockets, because she is the former wife of the co-founder of Google. So she has deep pockets. She's usually a Democratic sort of donor in person, but she has chosen to go with RFK Jr. She is along the same lines as far as the belief in vaccines, in medicine, and COVID. She has some of the same beliefs. maybe that's why she likes him. But let's listen.
Hey, although I grew up around the White House, I'm definitely not a career politician. I've spent the last 40 years of my career as an environmental lawyer and advocate fighting large corporate polluters and corrupt government agencies and trying to protect America's wild places and the quality of your food, the quality of the water you drink, and the quality of the air that you breathe. My hope is that your generation and that of your children will have the same opportunities for dignity and enrichment and prosperity and good health as the communities that earlier generations of Americans gave to my generation. And right now, I'm the top choice for young voters in this country. I'm also the most feared and hated candidate in Washington, D.C. among the elites because I'm not bought and I'm not viable by corporate interests or by the big lobbyists. As president, I'm going to end the forever wars. They bankrupted your generation and left you with $33 trillion in debt and gotten us nothing in return. I'm going to bring the money back.
All right, I really just wanted to make sure I included that poll that showed him 52% in that poll before I go to the actual video where she's actually talking. So now let's go to her actually talking, and then we're going to get to the reaction. So let's go to the VP pick, and let me make sure I get her name correctly. Nicole Shanahan is her name. Nicole Shanahan. So let's listen to her speak.
It wasn't until I met Bobby and the people supporting him that I felt any hope in the outcome of this election. As I've re-examined my Democratic Party assumptions, I have seen conservative voters with new eyes too. I have met farmers, I have met hunters who are some of the most staunch conservationists I've ever met, who understand ecosystems better than most. I have met mothers protecting their children who are searching every possible avenue for their health. And yet the Republican Party, like the Democratic, is letting them down because the actions of the party are diverting from the values that actually support individual freedom. In fact, the very failure of both parties to do their job to protect their founding values has contributed to the decline of this country in my lifetime. Maybe that's why I see so many Republicans disillusioned with their party as I become disillusioned with mine. If you are one of those disillusioned Republicans, I welcome you to join me, a disillusioned Democrat, in this movement to unify and heal America.
So that was her short speech, and needless to say, or maybe it should be said, there's broad panic in the establishment. That's not it. And let me show you. Oh, let me just show you a couple of reactions. Circular talk. That's how you said. This is Kyle Kalinske. He says RFK picked this VP because she has a shit ton of money and he wants to F her. That's some great analysis, right? That's Kyle. All right. Now I'm going to play that in a second here. Let's go to a different video. Now listen to some of the panic here. Now, this panic is just about third parties in general and a little bit on RFK, but this is Jen Psaki.
And science and all sorts of other things. Right. But I will say, Mika, I was nodding along as Tom was just talking. I think this is the biggest challenge. There's unquestionably Trump has a broad support in his base, as we've just been discussing, and we've seen that play out in the primary. That's the only piece, though, we know at this point. He has problems among independents and problems with an expanded electorate. But these third-party candidates are a huge, huge, huge problem, and there's a number of them. If you look at RFK Jr., it's the name recognition issue, as Tom was just talking about. And there are still states in this country, obviously, I mean, Georgia is one of them, I will name, where the Kennedy name is beloved, right? Where people may just not where they may just not know a lot about the fact that he is an anti-vaxxer who's a conspiracy theorist. They don't know that yet. So this is something, there is an aggressive effort that the campaign has been working with the Democratic National Committee on to run on this, but it needs to be broad. People need to be shouting it from the rooftops, because this is one of the biggest threats to Joe Biden being reelected is these third-party candidates. If you look at Michigan, Mika, and I know Senator Alyssa Slotkin is going to be on later. I almost called her senator. Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin is going to be on later. Michigan is a state where RFK, I think, is polling at 10%, right? And so this is a place where Joe Biden needs to win, and RFK Jr. is making a real threat to that. So it's good we're talking about it. It is a real threat. They're aware of it, but more needs to be done, and more people need to be talking about it and aware.
They are definitely afraid of RFK Jr., and they keep bringing up this. We needed to let people know he's anti-vaxxer.
And science and all sorts of other things. Right. But I will say, Mika.
Do they understand that's the reason why a lot of his support is there? Here's a RFK supporter, and this is real Lori Spencer. It's super tasty that Kennedy picked a strong, successful ethnic minority woman for Kamala Harris' hometown. Nicole Shanahan, a longtime Democrat who donated to Harris Biden 2020 campaign. Damn, y'all, I can't wait for this VP debate. So that is a RFK supporter who's in support of this pick. And let's look at a little bit more reaction, and then we're going to get out of here. Here's a little bit more reaction.
And it's the moment that's been terrifying Team Biden for months. Our Robert Kennedy Jr. officially naming attorney and entrepreneur Nicole Shanahan for his running mate as his independent campaign for president heats up.
70% of Americans, they don't want to have to choose between President Trump and President Biden. They don't want to choose between the lesser of two evils again. Both the Democrats and Republicans are looking at those poll results, and they're devising ways to keep me off the ballot. They're trying to keep me off the ballot and to frighten you into choosing between the two tired and unpopular heads of the uniparty.
And Team Biden is launching an all-out effort to stop RFK Jr. from securing any votes. The president's campaign staff has reportedly plotted an entire operation to take down Kennedy. And the liberal media is more than happy to play along.
My view is third parties, they're like cockroaches in the kitchen. Okay, it's not what they carry off that upsets you. It's what they fall into and foul up.
That sounds like democracy.
A vote for third party is basically a de facto vote for Donald Trump.
Democracy
I don't think it's a smart move to spend a lot of energy attacking Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I think he's probably a marginal candidate. I don't think he has a big impact on the election.
I do worry that Bobby just taking some percentage of votes from Biden could shift the election and lead to Trump's election.
Meanwhile, Joe and Kamala are finally hitting the campaign trail together in North Carolina. The Democratic duo trying to ramp up support for the administration's.
They go off into some other tangent. The 5 is very unbearable. So we're not going to be watching all of that. But that kind of sums up. It is a shortened version of what we were going to be talking about. I did have another clip or two to play, but I think I covered the bulk of the announcement, and I'm sure Nick will likely cover it also later today. So I'm sorry, tomorrow sometime. I'm sure you'll have something to talk on it. So we're going to be getting out of here. I got to take off and go pick up one of my daughters so I can make sure I make this appointment. That's why we're just doing 90 minutes today, and we just hit the 90-minute mark exactly. Hit that like button. Get us to 800 likes. Support us on Patreon. Let me put that up here. Put that one up. Support us on Patreon if you can. Let me read the super chats really quickly here. We got 4. I read None yet. Here's one. The whole state of Israel is an illegal settlement. Yes, to the point that Marianne was trying to make it seem like just the West Bank, the whole state. And that's from Beatrice. This one here from Gritty Image Photography. She tried and failed to copy Easter Hicks, Abraham. Marianne Williamson is painful to listen to. Esther. I keep saying Esther. Esther is one of my aunts is Esther. Esther is a word class order where whether you believer or not. I think that means to say world class order, not word, but world class is what I believe. Beatrice, again, that was some condescending tears, YT tears, shit from her. And they're talking about Marianne Williamson. Absolutely. This is the last one here. I got 5 on it, CJ. Just showing some love. These neoliberal capitalist pigs have never done anything for us, so we owe Marianne Williamson nothing. That is spot on. From Christian 999. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to be taking off. Sorry to leave you abruptly. This was a great stream. Hit that like button on your way out. And thank you for watching.